Welcome to this video for round 6 coverage of Town Memorial 2013, and I'm doing something rather uncommon here. I'm starting the video while one game is still going, but it is an awfully long game, and this video that I'm recording now won't be that long compared to some others, simply because it is the hottest day of the year here in Germany. We've got above 30 degrees Celsius, which means like 90 plus Fahrenheit. It's damn hot here, and I'm just waiting for some friends to arrive to go to the beer garden, if you know what I mean. So I'm just doing a rather quick review of today's games. There were some interesting things happening, so let's get to the action. I'll show briefly, it's an awfully long game as mentioned, the game that is still running, just that you get an impression what was happening there. This is Mirosevic against Carlsen, two of the guys near the end of the table, and this only shows that the tournament is damn strong if those players are at the end. Alright, let's see what happened here. We had a Nimzo, and Queen C2 was played by Moro. He often plays that. He also plays E4 and all kinds of things, but if he goes D4, he sometimes plays the Queen C2 line. D5, and here this Queen D5. This is slightly uncommon line nowadays, but it is still interesting. It immediately attacks the D4 pawn. I cannot draw any arrows here. This is annoying. Let me check. Can I actually... just a second here. It's not working. This is bad. Cannot draw any arrows here. When it's still, I think I needed to copy that. I don't know how this is working. Alright, so we need to do this without any errors. I'm sorry. Yeah, black is playing Queen F5. This is quite an interesting idea. The idea is if white takes on F5, E takes F5, gives black good light squared control. Queen B3 and Knight C6. So after a couple of moves, we reach a position where black has given up this bishop. So white has got the two bishops on C3 and F1. And white has also expanded with H3 and G4. Knight D5, bishop D2. Yeah, to be honest, I don't like black's position here at all, which is in a way due to the fact that I'm a well-known bishop pair addict. What can I say? I don't really like this position. Black's counterplay seems very weak to me, and white has got the two Bs. And in fact, he's played this in a very interesting manner. Rook G1, covering the bishop on G2, so that there are discoveries threatened now, like Knight E5. And after F6, G5, we see why the rook went to G1 and why white didn't castle. The king is fine on E1. He can use the rook on G1 nicely. And after a couple of moves, we got more trades, and in fact transposed into an endgame where still the two bishops are an important factor. In fact, white is just better here. There's no doubt about that. It's just a matter of how good is the position. After G6, here Moro decided to give up the bishop pair, but he's got something in return. We will see that this structure is also quite favorable for white. He's got the strong E4 bishop, and B5 is not so great a bishop. It's only there to defend A4 and put a little bit of pressure on E2, but this pawn can easily move. So the B5 bishop is a little bit like a piece that is pointing into thin air, while this E4 bishop helps white to push H4, H5. Just one thing. After a couple of moves, we have this change of the structure where black is left with the H-pawn, but this is not really a strong pass pawn. This is a weakness, and in fact white got some pressure against this pawn and won it. But black got counterplay. And if you look at this just a couple of moves later, we really don't need to check it in so much detail. Just a couple of moves later, this was exchanged and this was exchanged. Now we see that it's very difficult for white to make any substantial progress here. The e-pawn is not a pawn that you can just push home. I mean, this c4 bishop now is rather good. It's protected by b5. It has a look at the e6 square, and in fact the main issue is that white's king is on d2 and doesn't really help. So it went on for some more moves. In fact, white could play this tactic to transpose into a rook endgame, and at the end we reached this position. And it was really a draw, like 2 or 3 moves ago. Right here, is it still a draw? King c6 is the only move. This is now an analysis. I mean, this hasn't been played yet. King c6 is probably the only move. And how is white going to make any progress? I don't really see it. Maybe rook b5. Oh, this actually has been played. Maybe rook b5, king b4, but black's got... yeah, black can also try to go for counterattack against b2 pawn. I actually still think it's a draw, but we will see somewhat later. Maybe it's possible that they shuffle around for a while, so I didn't want to wait until this happened, so this is why I started the video even when this game still running. Okay, let's get to the finished games. We had Andreikin against Mamedov, and this time I even get to draw some arrows. Hooray. So a Scotch game with bishop c5. This is one of the main lines, knight f6 being the other. In fact, bishop c5 is a move that I never played in tournament chess, I think. And for no particular reason, but it is a pretty decent line. Andreikin now took on c6, and here Mamedov played a move that only recently had come into fashion. He played b takes c6. The traditional main move always has been queen to f6, threatening an intermediate mate here, so white cannot save the knight. But queen f3 had posed some problems in the last couple of years, where this kind of endgame often proved to be somewhat tricky for black. This is also why the move b takes c6 has come into fashion a bit. And well, I know the structure because I often play and have recommended this even in a video here, this line where black flicks in this check and then the capture. This is of course somewhat similar. In the game here we have the pawn still here, so I have always this position with pawn on c3. With the knight still being able to go to c3, this position was always considered to be somewhat better for white, but practice doesn't really confirm that. It seems that black is in pretty decent shape. We see this funny queen h4 move threatening the mate here, and white can only reply, not the only move, but it's the most sensible looking move, queen to f3, and now knight to h6. This is one idea of this queen h4 move. The queen is actually well placed on h4, it's an aggressive square, and knight to h6 to g, oops, this is a bit much, to g4 is an idea, or bishop g4 if you want. So it's an active position. Knight g4 is the main idea, also allowing knight to e5. This is also maybe more interesting than knight to f6 in comparison. Also because it leaves open the possibility of playing f7, f5. Bishop e3, yeah, this is a strong bishop, so it is exchanged, but this of course somewhat strengthened black's structure. Queen g3, yeah, it's hard to not exchange the queen really. This is really an annoying piece. So the queens are traded, and now f5, seeing You see, this is one point of getting the knight to h6, quickly having the possibility to play f7, f5, and exchanging this strong pawn on e4, so that in fact in this position black even is the one with an extra central pawn. So I think we can already conclude that this position is quite a success for black. Probably he reached quite easy equality. It's not more, but it's quite decent. So g4. This was mostly to keep the knight out of the game. So at first I thought that isn't black better here? I mean, you've got a better structure. Yeah, 2 islands against 3 islands. So, and there are also some weak spots here in white's position. A bit much like those squares, for instance. They're all weak. But yeah, black needs to spend some time with the knight. Yeah, this is the problem. You need some time to have it relocated. And the knight to d4 is even harder to achieve, which would be very nice. And in fact, we see that in the game, Mamedov went to b4 with the rook. A good, interesting idea, activating the piece, and only then activating the knight later. Is the idea. But white managed to get some counterplay with rook e7, d4, knight e4, and rook c8. Yeah. Doesn't want to give away the c-pawn so easily. And now a5. This is a really good move. The idea is to make this b-pawn move, like taking, and then after rook e1 and the possible knight c5, white has activated all pieces. This is pretty good. Now, good compensation. And white now even gets to e6, but it's not a big deal. I mean, in terms of equality for black, he always has this counterplay against b2. Knight e5 attacks d3 with the check, so white needs to react, plays knight f4 and knight f7 back. Yeah, and now white took on c7, getting a pawn back, and black now with a4, a3, trying to get the breakthrough going here on the queen side. I think the position is rather drawish actually. Rook takes c6, knight e5, rook to c7, and now g5. A tactical move, trying to dislodge this knight and then take d3. Knight moved, and now black went for this funny move, getting rid of this active rook. Yeah, this is the idea.
Check.
Black gets it back. So rook c2 was played,
check.
Knight takes d3 check, and now the exchange led to a really drawn
Check.
endgame. White defended the b-pawn, but it at the end went to a rook endgame,
Check.
where
Check.
white always has this g2 weakness. So this was traded off, not even awaiting
Check.
this, and it's a dead draw. So it seems to me a very correct draw. Sometimes it just happens. Both players play decently, and it's a draw. A remarkable thing is this opening idea, which is important for Scotch players or e1, e5 players. That b takes c6 and queen h4 might be a good antidote against this capture on c6. All right. Next game is Gelfand Carlsen. And here we see that Magnus is playing the Queen's Gambit with knight bd7. It's a bit of an ancient line, but he has played this before. In fact, he played it against Gelfand in the candidates in one of the early rounds, I think round 3 if I'm not mistaken. And Carlsen actually won a nice, very important game. In that game, Gelfand played bishop g5, and after c6, e3, queen a5, we got a Cambridge Springs. In this game, however, played today, there was bishop f4 played. This is, of course, one of the main moves against this bishop e7 move, which is the classical line of the Queen's Gambit. bishop f4, castles, and so on. The knight is not on d7. This is the difference. Here with knight d7, bishop f4, black actually has the chance to do something else. He can take on c4. And one point of this might be that knight b6 is covering this pawn later. And also that this structure with capturing and a6, b5, quite often this bishop is not so well placed on f4. It's really not a really helpful piece for white. And we see that in the game after a4 he played bishop d6. Interesting. I never saw this move exactly, or this idea exactly in this position. It is a common idea, but normal would have been c5, which would also be quite okay for black. But bishop d6 is a good idea, trying to get rid of one minor piece. And yeah, what is white supposed to do? Sometimes you even can allow black to take here and recapture with the e-pawn, but I'm not sure that this is a position where this is really helpful. Something like this is probably quite okay for black. You cannot expect to be better. This is not a problem. It's a very well-known pawn structure, even back from the 1920s and 30s. Famous games of Rubinstein and Anand. Okay, but Gelfand was obviously aware of this. He went for something else. He just took d6 and took c4. The kind of keep it simple method that should be good enough for a position where white is very safe and can hardly ever lose. And now Carlsen went for d6, d5. Probably it's hard to avoid this in the long run. And it's not a problem really. If you look at this d5, now b6. The thing is, black has a very straightforward and simple setup. And after this setup, it's very difficult for white to reach anything. Let's have a look. This is the setup, bishop to b7. And now just double on the c file, or exchange on the c file. This kind of position arises almost by force because there are no more pawn breaks in the position, like e4 or e5. They're very hard to play, and the c file just sees a total clearance here. And this kind of position here is of course a very, very small bit better for white because this bishop is better than the c8 bishop. However, to make anything concrete out of this is an entirely different matter. We see that after a couple of more moves, here the queen side is closed, and a couple of moves later we even had a queen trade. Yeah, this is just a little bit of strengthening by both sides, gaining some useful space. And now we had the queens off. So how to assess this position? You see that the pawns are completely symmetrical. This here is completely symmetrical on the king side and in the center. Here white has a space advantage, but he's got, at least on paper, the worst bishop because he's got the pawns on light squares. But this is not the main problem. This bishop on c8 probably never will get around to ever attack the a4 pawn. The only thing that white is going for him here, and this is something, is that these pawns here, d4 and d5, that the d5 pawn is on a light square and can be attacked by the bishop, or at least can be put there can be put some pressure on this pawn. And this is the only idea that white has left in the position. We see actually that it plays a role in the game. A couple of moves later, here Gelfand played the move f4, which is of course it's a good move. There's no other break really left that is any promising. So f4, and in fact I think now Carlsen played bishop to f7, and he played this rather quickly. He had much more time, and I actually believe this is a mistake, this move. He should have taken on f4, and this probably transposes to the game. But after here, now Gelfand actually had more than 7 minutes on the clock. And here I think Gelfand could have gotten a pretty substantial advantage with f5. And strangely enough, he didn't play it. This I find really surprising, because it's the obviously it's the clearly thematic move here to dislodge the e6 pawn so that you get at d5 to attack it. It's really hard to see how black avoids losing a pawn here. The only line that doesn't lose a pawn instantly is I think e5, but it's not great. I really don't see what black is supposed to play. If he takes, for example, just for argument's sake, check, something like this, it's pretty awful. Bishop b3 and e4 coming. White is just winning here. Black cannot take, and I don't really see a move. What is black supposed to do? Something like this. You can also just play in a similar matter. Ah, you can actually, yeah, you can actually do that. And this is quite the same. And white is again winning. f5, I think, would have gotten Carlsen into huge trouble. But strangely enough, Gelfand didn't play that. He played this first. Maybe he miscalculated something here, because now Carlsen could take and play knight g6, and this seems to hold. It's really it's a very fragile construction for black, but it seems to hold. I think also, if I read this correctly, Carlsen also said in the press conference that he thought the position was very drawish and pretty much dead around move 30, and then he said that he made some inaccurate moves so that Gelfand had something, and then he managed to equalize it again somehow. What I think is that here, after this is the difference compared to not allowing the exchange on f4, that black can actually activate this piece. And after that, I don't really see anything that white can do to play for a win. And also the computer doesn't. I mean, I only had very little time to prepare this, and the comp already goes down to something near 0 here. Black uses this pin as a defensive resource, and it seems that with precise play, and Carlsen showed that, this really should be a draw. And this, in fact, is a perpetual, quite a funny perpetual, with white having no opportunity to get out of the checks and still cover the knight on d5. So a bit of a lucky game with this one spot where, a bit lucky for Magnus, I mean, where Gelfand, I think, could have gotten a big edge here, this f5 opportunity. And this was a big game. Gelfand was on +2 before this game, and if he would have won this, +3 looks like a real big one for him. But okay, it just ended in a draw. Okay, we have Caruana against Kramnik. This was actually fairly interesting, despite this opening, where you cannot help but cannot help but ask yourself, oh my, really, again, the ending? Okay, and we get the ending, the famous Berlin Wall ending. h3, bishop d7, rook d1. Yeah, I cannot really tell so much about this, the opening. What I can tell is that what Caruana is doing here is quite interesting. He's delaying the knight c3 move, which is in fact the main move in this position here instead of h3. Knight c3 is by far the most popular move here, and here black has this position where he can play all kinds of moves. Bishop b7, king e8, h6, and so on. It's the main position of the Berlin Wall. Caruana is delaying this knight c3 move and instead plays h3, rook d1, and now g4. So he's playing a very, very direct attack on the king side. And it leads to quite interesting play. Knight to e7, knight g5. Okay, not much of a choice. This is hanging. Black needs to cover it. This is one of the ideas of bishop d7, to have this covering move. It's a bit ugly, of course, but yeah, it's a matter of long-term play and concrete play. White is trying for some concrete play on the king side. Long-term, there are always the two bishops. So if black manages to coordinate his pieces, his position, and is not going under here against this direct play on the king side. He's even pushing f4 now. If he's not directly rolled over here on the king side, black is in good shape with the two bishops. And it seems, look at the clocks, they were both in their preparation. h5 and f5, very sharp. Yeah, Kramnik took it, not much of a choice. And rook h4. This is very straightforward. And at first you think, what the hell is White doing? Isn't he just losing this pawn? And what about this pawn? In fact, there's an idea here. King f2. It's very, very interesting. White is threatening now to just use the king to protect this advanced structure. So black has not much of a choice, really. He is pretty much forced to capture, and this is what he did. Rook takes g4, and now rook to h1, intending rook h8. Quite a remarkable concept, trying to catch those pieces on the back rank where they are absolutely not coordinated. White also had the chance, the opportunity to play knight to h7, which is completely bizarre looking, but it's interesting. It attacks this bishop, and how do you protect it? In fact, black can play knight takes f5, knight f8, b6. Black can really play, funny enough, with the piece down, and I only had a brief look with the computer, and in fact the computer gives black sufficient compensation here, which seems absolutely strange to me, but the lines were pretty convincing. Black is playing c5 and bishop c6, and white is taking ages to get this piece back into play. h7, g5, and back again, and it takes a really long time. And in the meantime, moves like c5, bishop c6 threaten rook g2. There's knight d4, c2, and all kinds of active ideas for black. So it seems to be possible. Yeah, Caruana played rook h1. He actually thought a bit about that. Rook h1, and Kramnik took on f5. Obviously, he's still in his prep, which is still rather amazing. Okay, but he's in his preparation. He took there rook h8, check. Bishop check, king f3, and now rook to g1. And still in his prep, sacrificing check. A bishop and the rook. So check. After this and the capture, we can do a count, and we see that white is a rook up. White has an extra rook for just one pawn, and yeah, how to assess the position? It seems that it's still okay for black, and this is already, I mean, even if you don't invest any time analyzing yourself, you see that Kramnik played this out of his preparation, so you pretty much know that it is okay. But in fact, the simple threat knight c2 and takes a1 is so strong that white is actually forced to very quickly get to a draw here before attacking this, and c4, intending to play c5, winning another piece. And now black must play c5 to prevent that. And now after a3, there's this idea, but check. Black can give this check, and in fact here this series of checks is a perpetual, and they agree to draw here. You see that Kramnik actually spent some time here before this, before he actually decided on the perpetual. He can look here. After a3 he spent lots of time, and it seems that he didn't find anything better. He probably had prepared this line and just concluded, okay, if everything else fails, I can make the draw here, which is not too bad against a world-class player, and maybe I even have something better, but it seems there is nothing better. The computer also says it's a draw and recommends this series of checks. So a draw between those two. Kramnik is still at the bottom of the table with -2. Okay, and now let's go to the main game of today's round. Anand against Nakamura, the world champion, against the US #1, Hikaru Nakamura. Nakamura having an excellent tournament by now, winning 3 games in the last couple of rounds. He started with a loss and then three wins, and he's played some excellent chess along the way. And now he's playing black against the world champion. Anand had lost yesterday, a very depressing loss against Carlsen. So let's see what happens here. We got a Rouleau pass, Naka playing e5, so not the knight off, but e5. And in fact he played g6. Yeah, Vichy is rather predictable. He's always playing the Rui. I really don't remember him playing anything else. And okay, and g6 by Nakamura, which is an interesting sideline. In fact, it's a sideline that I have studied myself quite a while ago, but I concluded that I don't like it so much because of this line. This line I didn't like, take, and bishop g5, if I remember correctly, is what I didn't like. It leads to an endgame after bishop e7. It's not the end of the world, but this kind of position is this is the position that is coming up, and I thought this was a bit too depressing for black. It's very solid. I mean, black can play this, no doubt, but if I want a solid position in the Rui, I can play the stuff that I already play, like the Chigorin also. So, well, I didn't like that so much, but this didn't happen in the game. Anand just castled. White can also play stuff like this, which is interesting, gambit style, or can also play c3 and d4, of course, which is the main line. But castles bishop g7 now after c3 could transpose to a main line. Now Nakamura though played a6, which is interesting. But the normal reply now would be bishop a4, and I'm pretty surprised that Anand now took on c6. I mean, he's very well known as having a soft spot for knights compared to bishops. He's probably from the world class the player who by far most frequently plays with knights against bishops. To be honest, I really don't like the capture here. But okay, I'm, as mentioned more than once, always a fan of the bishops, so it feels to me that giving up the 2 bishops so early should be quite okay for black. We can look at this position here, just this position. Yeah, for me this is a good bishop, and this is another good bishop, which at the moment admittedly doesn't do so much. I cannot really post it anywhere actively, but okay, you still have it for later. And what I'm not sure of here is what exactly White's plan is. He's obviously not worse. White cannot be worse. He's got a center, he's got good development, and it's a very healthy position. But I'm not so sure what White's plan is here. It's probably still around an equal position, but the plan, what's the plan? For black, I always know, okay, I've got the 2 bishops, I only need to trade down some things and I will have a good endgame. But I'm not so sure what White is doing here. In fact, in this position as black, I got some comments that lately I sometimes ask the audience to just pause the video for a couple of seconds and try to find a good move yourself. This is one of those positions where I can ask you again for black. Think about a move here. What should black play? It's a positional move, a strategical idea. It's not a tactical thing. Okay, you can already guess that there's no tactics in there. What should black do here? I mean, you have more than one move, but there's one important feature of the position that can be addressed by a move which I think is the strongest in this position. Think about it. I'll be quiet for a couple of seconds so that you can easily pause the video. Yeah, alright. The good and strong move that Nakamura here played is the move h6. This is very strong. The idea is to play g6, g5 and then knight to g6, because he's looking at his pieces and asking himself, okay, what is my worst piece? And the worst piece for black is the knight on e7. It doesn't do anything. It only looks at controlled squares, and it's in the way of a rook, putting pressure on the e-pawn, and in general the knight is not doing anything here. So he's playing h6 and g5 to activate the knight, to clear the e-file, make those kinds of moves possible later, and even play g5, g4 to make use of this hook on h3. So h6 and g5 is a very good idea, positional idea, and something that is often difficult to play in a game that you play yourself, because it costs time. You spend two moves, h6 and g5, but it really improves the pieces at the end. The knight on g6 is just much better than on e7. So a very strong move, but it's hard to play, I mean, in a practical game. So don't be afraid. If you spot a good idea, play it. Or you think, if you think about something and you think it's a good idea, you should be confident enough to play it. Okay, well, Anand is centralizing pieces. I actually would have liked more to play rook e1 and rook d1, but I'm not entirely sure what's happening here, to be honest. d5, yeah, this is one of the ideas that white can go for, but of course, if you look at this d5, c5, this is an excellent diagonal. White's plan is, we see this now with knight b5 and a possible d6 push, but it seems that this is really not leading to anything or to anywhere. Black's got g4, this counterplay, only possible because of the g-pawn push, and now the bishop is developed here nicely, putting up a pin. White now played bishop to d2 to defend this knight so that you can recapture with a piece. Queen to d7, and now rook c1. I don't really understand what rook c1 is doing. I thought rook e1, rook d1 still, to have the pawns, to have the rooks behind the pawns. I prefer that, but I think the real issue is coming now. I mean, c6 took, and now I think the next move by Anand really seems to be a mistake. He played bishop to c3, and I think, and also this view is supported by the comp, that he really should play rook e1 here and try to correct the rook placement. I already quite clearly prefer black. The two bishops are strong, I mean, no doubt about that. And black has got ideas to activate the knight as well. For instance, if you think about a move like bishop c3, black has always knight f4. But I think rook e1 was better. He played this bishop c3 move, trying to, of course, exchange the long diagonal bishop here. But it just has got one problem. Black can take here and damage the pawn structure. G takes, and rook d8 played. Here also knight f4 was interesting, intending queen to g6, and maybe this was even better. It's very difficult actually for white to play this position. It seems that the best move here is rook d6, everything else seems to lose instantly. And after queen c8 there's a double threat with queen h4 to g2 mate, and knight to e2, winning the exchange. And in fact, black wins the exchange now. You need to play that, attacking the knight, and then black can grab the exchange. and this should be quite a big edge for black. White still hangs on a bit. He's got active pieces left, and the king is relatively secure, but it seems that it should be excellent for black. However, he played rook d1, rook d8, which keeps some advantage, of course, still, because this structure is simply bad. And now Anand defended by exchanging, took on d8 and rook to d1. But the problem is, if you look at this now, this is just not a good endgame. Black has got the h-pawn as a passer. These pawns are pretty much not mobile, and it's very difficult to make any big headway for white. While black always got the h-pawn. White still has defensive resources, but it seems to be very tricky now. He played queen d5, and after the exchange, and this exchange, in fact, the computer points out the move king f8 and says black is instantly winning. It may be more precise than what Nakamura played, but he kept an advantage anyhow. Played knight to e5, attacking this one. White activated knight to d6. It's not so great to take on f3 now. There's something more important to do. Get your king into the game. King h2. Here white could have played f4 as a possible alternative, but after knight d3 it seems that black is also in great shape. Check. At the end there's always this move attacking the a-pawn, and white now can capture here, of course, but now black approaches with the king and at the end will win the pawn. So this is excellent for black, in fact winning. Yeah, this is what was played, and it seems really that this position here, quite interesting. Here the knight is trapped now. White needs to resort to some tricks. Check. Yeah, he can barely keep the knight. The problem is though that the resulting endgame is just terrible. Black's king invades and wins pawns, and you still have the h-pawn. It's in f. Yeah, sorry, I had a small technical glitch here. In effect, black has an extra pawn anyway, because the h-pawn is just as good as an extra pawn, because these are two, but it only counts as one. And black's king is so active. So, in fact, the game finished rather quickly, with Nakamura winning the c-pawn and now pushing the c-pawn. And here Anand resigned. So, a second loss in a row for the world champion. And Nakamura winning yet again, and now he's really leading this tournament alone with +3. He's looking to get an excellent result, and pretty much everything depends now on the game in the, I think it's a penultimate round against Carlsen, where Magnus certainly will try to win, to catch Nakamura, but even this is just one game. There are of course 2 more games left for Nakamura, but he's playing excellently in this event now, and has excellent chances to win this. But also the standings is quite amazing, with Anand and Kramnik being the two people at the bottom. A quick update on Moro against Carlsen. On move 100 they agreed to a draw, and we had this rook endgame, and black held on to the a-pawn, and yeah, well, it's no use to study this at this present time. It ended in a draw on move 100. So thanks for watching. I'll be uploading this video now, and I'm off in seconds to the beer garden. Thanks, and enjoy the summer if you have similar temperatures as we have here. Bye.